Thank you all for coming today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick Reynolds. And as Jim said, I've been the historian here for a lot of years. This park was a dream of a lot of people for a long, long time. And our town board in 2016 had the foresight to actually purchase it and do something with it. However, buying large tracts of land is a bit of a problem for towns these days because we don't have an awful lot of money. And so we needed to get a large sum of money in order to be able to do that. And fortunately, we did. And I'll tell you that story in a minute. But my ultimate goal for this park has always been to make it into a mini national park. You can tour it by yourself. You can tour it with a tour guide. There's history, there's nature, there's all kinds of different ecological environments in here. There's something for everybody. I'm going to show you some of that today, but I'm sure you'll uncover things on your own as well about this park. But in 2016, a man named Shidzik, Mr. Shidzik, left us $1 million. And in that will, in his will, he said, you must use it for a passive park. Now, a passive park is something that's become very common in the last 15 years or so in most towns. Passive park does not allow for playgrounds, tennis courts, pickleball courts, which are becoming popular everywhere now. It doesn't allow for human activities. It wants to leave everything the way it was. And that's what this park is. He did stipulate in his will that there was a certain percentage that could be used for human upgrades. We used the vast majority of that up right in this parking lot because we had to have someplace for people to park if they were going to go in there. So as we walk down this path today, I want you to realize it's the same path that Teddy Roosevelt walked. Or more likely, he rode his carriage. At that time, back in the early 1900s, this property extended all the way to the lake that way. So he would have come by stagecoach into the Ballston Lake area and then probably gotten some kind of a ride up here and down this pathway. And he was here frequently because he was a friend of the people who lived here. Anchor Diamond Park. We had quite a fight over the name for this place because I know that what's in there is the Hawkwood Mansion. You're going to see what's left of the Hawkwood Mansion when we go in there. I wanted to name this Hawkwood because that's historically the proper name for it. The will stipulated otherwise. The will said, you must name it after my company and my road. The Anchor Glass Company on Diamond Road, which is over by Lakeside Farms area. So that's why it's called Anchor Diamond Park, but we compromised. Anchor Diamond Park at Hawkwood. So we got both of them in there, but we fulfilled the story of the will itself. We paid $500,000 for this piece of property. It's 246 acres in size. That's a pretty good per acreage price in this day and age. Mr. Taylor, who sold it to us, lived in Colorado, couldn't manage it anymore. It was being overrun by hunters and by people doing other nasty things in here. He wanted to divest himself of this property completely. And so he sold it to us for a very cheap price. The other $500,000 in the will has been used for parking lot and for upgrades that you'll see as we go through the park itself. So we've done some things in here. We're not planning on doing an awful lot. I'm pretty happy with the way it is right now. Do we need to do a little work in terms of keeping it up? Yes, and Saratoga Plan does that for us. We have directly invested in Saratoga Plan to control the trails, clean the trails, take care of the trails. Somebody's Ring camera's going off. Yeah. So you'll see that they do a pretty good job in here. And you'll see the remains of some of the trees that have fallen and then been cut up and just left on the side. It's all natural. It's just left that way. So come on into the park with me. So maybe the first half of you go down this way, you lean up against that fence is the easiest way. First half of you, and then the rest of you along in here. Moab, isn't that a wonderful place? Love Moab. I could live in Moab. All right. This is another scout project. This was done by Tyler Roos, who was a Burnt Hills High School kid. This is engineered remarkably. I went to a Parks and Rec committee meeting where he proposed this idea, and people asked him all these questions, and I'm sitting there saying to myself, I have no idea what this kid is talking about. He was like way over my head in terms of his engineering ability. His father was also an engineer, so I'm sure his father helped him a great deal on it as well. But when we bought this property, there was no bridge crossing this creek. That was the bridge. And one of the first things we realized is we are in for big liability if anybody falls off that bridge, and we better do something about that. So he came up with this idea to build this bridge. This has I-beams underneath it. It can hold a four-wheeler. If we ever needed to get people in here in an emergency, we could get them in through this bridge. So this was a very necessary addition for safety purposes here. This is going over the Delavan Creek. Delavan was the owner of this property in the 1830s, 1820s, 30s, 40s, maybe somewhere around in the early 1800s. Edward Delavan was from Albany. He owned a hotel in Albany, and this hotel was famous. Maybe not necessarily for what he would want it to be famous for. He was big into the temperance movement, the anti-drinking movement. However, the stories we hear from the Delavan Hotel, there was a lot of drinking going on there, and there was a lot of other stuff going on there too. It was a pretty famous place. It burned down in the 1880s, and it is replaced by something that most of you will be familiar with, and that is Union Station. So that was the site of the Delavan Hotel. They did not do an awful lot to this original property. They were wealthy, but they didn't do an awful lot, make an awful lot of changes.
Did Delavan have a mansion or house on this property?
Yep, the house you're going to see next. That's the Delavan house, yep. Don't you love the way they're all so tall, and they form that canopy over the top? Yeah. Which is exactly what used to happen on Lake Hill Road many, many years ago. Come on up in this area in here. You're going to get 3 pictures. Keep the 3 pictures. Don't pass one on to somebody else. Everybody's going to have 3 pictures in their hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there 3 there?
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Didn't feel right.
Oh, you have enough for everyone?
I should have enough for everybody.
I was going to say we could just.
Okay, you can share. Yeah. All right, this is the original mansion right here. Now, if you look closely, and it's hard to do in the summertime, but there's a stone wall way in the back. You can just barely see it. There's a stone wall over here underneath this tree that's fallen. This was the original Hawkwood Mansion, originally built in 1790, not called Hawkwood at that time. It was built on this property that originally was owned by a guy named Mitchell, whom we know nothing about whatsoever. But the guy that built this mansion was a guy named Walton, Henry Walton, who was a financier, a trader, and made all kinds of money that way. He owned a lot of property in Saratoga. But instead of building his mansion in Saratoga, he went outside the box and he built it in Ballston. Now, Ballston in 1790 is nothing. There is nothing here virtually. There was a settlement because the original white settlers came in here in the 1760s, but there couldn't have been more than 100 people or so here. So it's very, very small. But he built his mansion here, kind of bucked the trend of that day, because everybody wanted to build in Saratoga, because that was the up-and-coming place. Walton owned a lot of the land that is now on the property that is Skidmore College. So that was his property. He owned it for not very long, but the people who owned it the longest and who did the most with it were the Bakers, Mr. and Mrs. Baker. They were very wealthy. They made this into a real mansion, added on to it, and did all kinds of things to it to make it a much more hospitable place. Now, if you take a look at the pictures in front of you, they are in somewhat chronological order. The first one being late 1800s, probably. The second one, that's Mr. and Mrs. Baker sitting there. Mrs. Baker, who you did not call by her first name, you called her the Countess. She was of Italian royalty, and she didn't want to be called anything but the Countess. And then the third picture is what it looked like in the 1940s, when it was disintegrating. The third picture comes from the Library of Congress. It's what's called a HABS picture, Historic American Buildings Survey. And they went around the country taking pictures of all the places that they thought were most significant in America. This was one of them. Wow. Now, take a look at those three pictures. Tell me where the front door to the house was. Morning, folks.
I think facing this way.
So, in here?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I think. Well, from where they're
What do you mean that way? Facing that way? Anybody else? Front entrance.
that way, then it's probably wrong.
The front entrance is actually over there. Now, this road is coming in, and then it curves around in front of what was the front of the house. If you kind of look, and it's not quite as obvious as it was, but notice there are a lot of younger trees in there, as opposed to some other areas in this, especially as we walked in. That's new growth forest. So that's grown up over the course of a lot of time. So that was the front entrance. We always used to think this was the front entrance. And all this junk that's here is just people that find all over the place, and they put it here, and then they email me and said, Rick, I found this, tell me what it is. I have no idea what it is. Most of it's just plain junk that was thrown in here over many, many years.
So
But-
this is the front of the house here where they're seated in front?
Yes, yes.
But facing that way.
If you look at that sign that's behind you over there, it says this is the front, because we figured that out. History changes. History never stays the same. That's why it's so exciting to history geeks like me, because we know that things are going to change. And I may tell you things today that I'll find tomorrow are wrong. And that's just the way history is. But this is really not the entrance, even though it kind of looks it. The fence is another scout project. And the fence is a kind of a subtle reminder not to walk in there. And it works pretty well. I'm sure there are people who go down in there, but I've never heard of anybody going down in there. And periodically we do clean it out so that you can see the foundation a little bit. It burned down in the 1960s, but before it burned down, the kids of the 1960s would have a great time in here. They would go into the house, they would go into the cabinets, pull out the pottery, put it on the mantelpiece, and do target practice with the pottery. I've heard lots of stories of what went on here in the 1960s. So that's why when we do archaeological digs here, we find a lot of broken pottery, because it's from that event that was going on. And that's as important as anything else to the history of this place. Now, if you'll notice, it's hard to see it, but there are down in there some pipes. This is the first house in the town of Ballston to have lights and water in it. The lights were carbide. Remember the little lanterns the miners used to wear down in the caves? That's water dripping on carbide, produces carbonic gas. I think I got that right. And that's what they had in this house. You had to light them in order to make them work. But that's a remarkable accomplishment. That was in the early 1900s. They also had water. They had water closets. Back over in there, and you may be able to see it later from a different vantage point, there's a pond. The pond pumped water to a windmill, which was over in that direction. The windmill pumped it to the house. They had water closets in here. For those of you who don't remember water closets, they're tanks that are sitting up in the air, and you pull a string and the water flushes downward into the toilet. So this was a model house in a lot of ways for a long time. The Bakers lived here for quite a long time. They were friends of Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy once, probably more than once, brought one of his daughters here. He may have only had one daughter, but brought his daughter here, sent his daughter out to play in the yard. The daughter promptly fell into a horse's trough and got all wet and dirty and everything. She came in crying to Teddy. He brushed her off and said, "Go on back out and play." Can you imagine parents doing that today? It's a very different world than what they lived in 100-some years ago. But Teddy did visit here a lot of times. Very good friends with the Bakers.
Was she really a countess?
She supposedly was of Italian heritage, yes. She was just kind of snotty about it. Not the kind of person I want to hang around with. Now, if you'll turn around, you'll see a bench. One of the families who lived here was the Turnbull family. They lived here in the late 1800s. Within the last year or so, the three daughters, or are they granddaughters? No, I think they were daughters of the owners of this property, came to the town and said, "We'd like to put a bench in this park in memory of our mother." But they're three women. They're not small women. So they said the bench has to be big enough so we can fit all of us on the bench and have our picture taken on this bench that will be in memory of our mother. And that's the bench that was finally decided on. It overlooks the creek. I always thought it was going to overlook the foundation, but I think they probably made a better choice to overlook the creek itself. So there's a memory to the Turnbull family in here. And you're going to see another memorial later on to other people. Okay, questions?
Was there a full foundation?
Full foundation. You're going to see another foundation that's in much better shape in a few minutes. And you'll see how they made them.
So it's just kind of filled in?
It's just filled in. It's got weeds growing all through it because it's just stones put together. It's not concrete or anything. They didn't do that kind of stuff back in the 1700s.
When was the last archaeological dig, or how many have there been? And
We've done 2 community archaeological digs here. The last one was before COVID. This place was used as a garbage dump for years. People knew it was unoccupied. They came and threw stuff in here. When we purchased this property, there were a whole lot of hunters. What do you call the stand? Hunting stands?
Yes.
The stands up in the trees we had to remove. We tried to find out who owned them because we wanted them to come take them down themselves. Never could figure that out. Finally, we just took them down.
Cistern?
It is, yes. Well, you can do the tour. This is a cistern. It directs the water off the roof of the house. The kitchen was actually right behind where these guys are standing. Directs the water off the roof and into here, and they would use this for household purposes. We don't know how old this is. I've never tried to date it. But when we initially bought this property, the cistern and the well, which is over further, we'll walk by it in a minute, were both here, just wide open holes. And one of the initial things we had to do was cover these holes because, again, there's a liability issue there if anybody fell in, and we don't want anybody getting hurt.
How deep are they?
Don't know. Never tried to figure that out. I'm not going down in there. I don't know what's down there. So Cliff Sampson, who lives on Good Street, built these structures all around it. You'll see a number of them, all covering the holes so that they're protected. But that was their access to water. And this one is the well, and you can just kind of walk by this. This is nowhere near as fancy. And this probably goes back further, but we don't know that for sure.
I know there are springs in Boston and Saratoga. Are there any in this?
Not in this area, no.
Not here.
No. There was a spring down by Boston Lake, I believe.
Okay.
But that may have been a product of the lake or something too. But most of the springs were north, Boston Spa and Saratoga. And of course, Boston Spa was the spring capital of the world in the early 1800s. It was going to be the place where everybody went. The Sanssouci Hotel, which was there, was a big time resort that everybody who was anybody went to. It was a really big place. And Boston Spa, and I'm not blaming them for this because they didn't know what they were doing, but they tried to bring more people into the town and they built a lot of factories. And when they built factories, they disrupted the underwater supplies and destroyed a lot of the wells in Boston Spa. And then Saratoga said, oh, we're going to take over that capital. And they have become the spring capital now. So that's how Boston Spa lost its famosity. Is that a word? It's tourism, yeah. Yeah, it is. I kind of like it. There's a lot of locusts in here. Locusts were planted by people in the 1700s for a particular reason. They grow incredibly fast and they grow incredibly tall. And so what they act as automatic lightning rods. That way it wouldn't connect lightning rods. The lightning wouldn't hit their house, it would hit the locust trees instead. So that's why you see locusts around houses very often 300 years ago. This was the slave quarters. Yes, there were slaves here. Yes, there were slaves everywhere. People don't like to think that in the North. They thought we didn't have slaves, but there were. They were not treated in quite the same way as some of the southern plantation owners treated slaves. So it's not quite as awful, but slavery in itself is not a good thing in any way. But this is where the slaves lived. That is an incredibly well-preserved wall to the slave quarters. We don't know how many slaves there were here. We don't know how many lived in this place, but they also have a well and a cistern over here as well. So it was a pretty extensive area. There's also a lot of barns in this area, some of which there are still some remains of foundation, which you can't see at this time of year at all, but we've never tried to excavate them in any way to find out what's exactly there. But it's a great picture of a wall, and the way they built them and how it's withstood this. 200, and I can't do math in my head, 250 years. It's pretty remarkable.
There's a piece of metal.
Yep, there's lots of metal back over in here. Somebody must use this as a dump site. A lot of farming done here over the years.
Any stone walls, or is it just fencing?
There are foundation walls that look like stone walls, but I don't think there's any stone wall. As we cross the next bridge, you can see remains of something, but we don't know what it is. So, all right, let's head to the outhouse.
Don't say that.
All right, let's keep moving. This is beautiful, and you look a little bit further yet, you're going to see all these little tiny pine trees beginning to grow. Notice the trees?
Yeah.
Straight line down. They're sugar maples. This was a sugar maple farm. And it's some, maybe you see better if you get even over a little further. You can. If you want to walk over a little further, you can see even more. Someone told me there's an old building way back in there someplace that may have been like the Sugar Shack. I've never gone back there to try to actually find it. Now, when you see trees lined up like this, very often that was done by the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, during the Depression. This was not. This was done by whoever owned the property at that particular time. But you'll see that other places and other parks that you go to, you'll see trees lined up done by the CCC. So this may have been sugar maple territory at some point in time, although we have no records that indicate that in any way. But it's kind of an interesting way they've set it all up like this. All right, we're headed back to the path. You okay getting out of here?
We're gonna go that way?
No, I'll lead the way here. This is the way I go.
Boston.
Boston Lake, yeah.
Yes.
When did it start shrinking down at the property?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and try to figure out deeds, which is really difficult. It's really difficult to figure it. Certainly by the time the Bakers had it, I want to say it was more like in the 700-800 acre area, but I'm just guessing. It was a lot more than what it is now.
Okay.
This is a memorial to Tom Shotman. Now that name is probably not familiar to a lot of you, but Tom Shotman was an educator, and he worked for Burn Hill Schools, Scotia Schools, a number of other places. An administrator for school districts. I did not know him when he was in education. Our paths just never crossed. I knew him when he was in his 90s, because for 16 years I worked driving elderly people to medical appointments 2 days a week, working for Captain Community Human Services. I just resigned from them last week. But I met him because he needed therapy for his vocal cords. He had basically lost his voice. He had something go wrong with his heart and had to go down to his heart through his throat or something like that. And there was some kind of an issue, and he had no volume to his voice anymore. That disturbed him greatly because even in his 90s, he was going into Stevens Elementary School in Boston Lake, and reading to kindergartners. And he loved doing it. And from everything I've heard from people at Stevens, he was wonderful doing it. They loved him for it. He wanted to build his voice back so that he could go back and do that. Unfortunately, he did not live to be able to do that because he passed away. So when I was giving this tour some years after his death, and I walked down this hill, there are two people sitting on this bench. One was his wife, Ruth, and one was his daughter. I told the story that I just told you in front of them. Ruth, I think, was not well at that point, and I'm not sure she totally understood what I was saying. His daughter totally understood what I was saying and was in tears over it. So this is the Shotman bench in memory of a man that I got to know and really, really enjoy. Just a wonderful gentleman. And his wife, too, was wonderful. They were big at Skidmore College. He was a sculptor. There was a lot of sculpture at Skidmore that he did. He also had sculptures all behind his house on Good Street. I don't know whatever happened to all of that when she had to move out of there after his death. So I don't know what became of that. But he's an interesting, very interesting man, and we have this memorial to him, so his story will live forever, which is a really nice thing on the part of the family to do that. A lot of things in their house, and I never was in it. I would like to have been in it, but they didn't invite me. So,
I never went to the house. Was it in Boston?
yep, right on Good Street in town of Boston. Not far from here.
They started a group called the Thursday Naturalists, and a lot
Okay.
of professors. It was originally all women, but then they started to let some men in, and it was for 50 or 60 years they had this group, and they would come here too. And they invited me, which I appreciate it.
This is the Mystery Fireplace. You are 3/4 of a mile from the mansion. Why would they build a fireplace that far out? And we do not know. I have, however, found bricks in there that had name of a company on them, and was able to trace that company and found out that they were around the turn of the century, around 1900. So this fireplace was probably built in that vicinity, which would be when the Bakers owned the property. But why they built this way out here, I don't know. Now, if you look at this, it kind of looks like there was a roof right in there. When we did archaeological digging out here, we found nothing. Now, you would think you would find metal nails. We didn't find anything. So that would tend to throw that theory down the tubes. But then I had a metal detector come out here. And metal detecting, to some archaeologists, is considered a no-no. They don't like it at all. I just think of it as another tool to find out information. So he came out here, he did find metal nails. So maybe there was a roof there, and maybe those nails held some of it together. But we really don't know. The only thing we know is that, again, back in the 1960s, this is where the beer parties and the hot dog parties happened. Cooking hot dogs over the fireplace, which obviously has been redone at some point because these are much newer bricks. One of the things I have actively tried to do, because historians tend to concentrate on wars, like the Revolution and the Civil War, I've tried to concentrate on the 50s and the 60s, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, because all that history is going to get lost if we don't preserve that. Mm-hmm. And we've got photographic evidence of that era, which we don't have when you go back before the Civil War. So I've accumulated quite a bit of photographic information about that era in our town. And that's one of the stories that we have, is the story of teenagers out here partying.
The fact that it has that tile in
The flue?
it, doesn't that date it somewhere?
Yeah, that's probably added too.
Oh, you think
That's all I can assume.
okay.
Unless it was built a lot later than we think. And
Oh, okay.
it could have been much later, and they used bricks from a company that was out of business by that point or something. I mean, it's all conjecture. And as a historian, I don't like conjecture. I want proof. I want evidence. And I don't have a lot of evidence. So people on tours are always giving me all these theories of what they think this is. Well, you're welcome to have your theories, but you got to prove it to me. You got to prove it to me. So this is as far back as we get in the park. Now, I don't know if you remember this or not, Mary Beth. If you go back over in this way, you'll end up on Good Street. And the original plan in this park was to build an entrance off of Chase Lane, I think it's Chase Lane, into the park. And it would come in down in there someplace, not too far down here. And that way would give us access to the back of the park in an emergency situation. And it would also give people closer to the center of the town access to this park. Unfortunately, that has never happened. And part of the reason it didn't happen is because the man who owns property in that area built his garage across the access that the town owns. And that's in court. It's been in court for years. So I don't know how that's ever going to end up or what we're going to do about that. If that ends up getting resolved in our favor, there might be a way to build that access in here. There used to be some ribbons on some of the trees, and you could see where that road was. I think they've all disintegrated because it was years ago now that was going on. So there's these little issues, and it was, as some of you heard, the bird watching area right near the Shotman Bench. We've always talked of building a platform there, so people could go in here and bird watch. That's another thing we could do down the road. So we're constantly coming up with different ideas to improve things and make things a little bit better. But at the same time, we have to maintain what is here as well. And that's a considerable amount of work and a lot of money. You notice these little tags, trail markers. Well, Originally, we were not going to use trail markers because at that time, about 10 years ago, it was considered that was detrimental to the tree. So we painted arrows. Sometimes you see white arrows and orange arrows. We painted arrows, special paint that was not going to harm the tree in any way. Well, now they've replaced all those with these kind of markers. And as Dave told me the other day, you'll notice they're not nailed all the way in. So the tree doesn't grow out around the top of them. And so they're supposedly not a problem for the tree anymore. We keep changing how we do some of those things. So that's an acceptable way to do it. You will also see, don't see any here, there's little tags on the bottoms of the trees. And those are trees that have been treated for, somebody's gonna have to help me, the woolly adelgid, the woolly adelgid, which destroys what kind of trees? Hemlocks? Okay, that might have a, if they consider it's been impacted, it'll have a little tag on it that it's been treated.
That's some sort of a bug.
It's a bug, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's very detrimental to the trees, and we have to periodically go through, identify the trees that need to be treated, and take care of them. Otherwise, we're going to have a whole lot of dead trees in here. So that, of course, is a very expensive proposition as well to do. So there's all those little things that we have to do. Okay? Okay, let's go see a famous tree.
It's native.
The guy that owned the house, Guy Baker, for 20, 30 years, something like that, had a brother, William Bliss Baker, and lived with him at times at this house. But over the years that he came here to visit, and he was from New York City, I believe, he and Guy, William Bliss and Guy, would take a canoe off the end of their property on Ballston Lake, and they would canoe up and down Ballston Lake to find the perfect place to build an art studio, because William Bliss Baker was an artist, and quite a good artist. They finally found the place and bought the land. It was high on a bluff overlooking the lake. What it's known as now is the Castle. It's on East Side Drive, way down East Side Drive on Ballston Lake. And that was built as an artist studio. And William Bliss Baker had his studio in the 3rd floor. And at that time, the trees weren't all grown up so much. So you could look out and see not only the lake, but you could see supposedly the Catskill Mountains from there, because you were way, way up there. William Bliss Baker was quite an artist. We have a lot of his paintings. Many of them were done of the Ballston Lake area. One time when he was in his 20s, he went to New York City and went skating at Central Park. He fell while skating, cracked his head open. Of course, this is back in the early 1900s, maybe even late 1800s. They had no idea what to do for something like that at that point, so he died at the age of 28. But he was a remarkable person and would have probably been famous, and he, Hudson River artist, would have been a famous artist if he had lived longer. So he's related to Guy Baker, who owned this property. All right, let's go to the tree. This is a 300-year-old tree. I was out here one day with a guy named Mike Gage. Some of you may know Mike. He's a botanist. And he taught me so much about botany and plants and things like that, most of which I cannot remember. But he knows his stuff. And he shows me this tree and says, "Rick, this is 300 years old." So I said, "How do you know that?" He says, "Well, I can tell by 2 things. Number 1, the bark is really scraggly. And number 2, notice the arms way up there. They don't just go straight up, they go down and up. And that's a sign of a very old tree. I think it may be dead." It's going to destroy my tour. I'm losing a stop on my tour.
Did he say if it was a sugar maple? Or?
It tells you right here. It is a maple tree. It's a maple, yeah. It's a maple tree. I was oohed and awed by this. Wow, we got a 300-year-old tree. And he looks at me and says, you know, that's really not that old for a tree. There are 700-800-year-old trees in America, and I've seen them. But I still think it's pretty cool to have a 300-year-old tree right here. And I'm still going to bring people out here.
Probably a
Yeah,
few more.
There probably are. He said there are others.
In New York, where we have harsh winters, I mean, the trees die in
Right.
the winter.
Right. But it's a neat thing, and it is my carrot that I hold out to kids. If you go with me this whole tour, you're going to see a 300-year-old tree, and they're thrilled to see this 300-year-old tree. So it's a neat little tree, and we do have a QR code set up for it so that people can find out just what I've told you on their own as well. All right, we have one more stop, and that last stop is back by the mansion. It is a voluntary stop. I'm not going to force anybody to do it or anything because it's kind of difficult to get to. So if you're uncomfortable with it, please don't do it. And you'll see what I mean when we get to it. But I want to give that option to anybody who does want to see this last thing that I'll share with you about this park. So let's head back to where we started. All right, so this last voluntary stop is up at the top of that hill. The problem is you have to walk over these rocks to get there. I don't want anybody doing that if you do not feel secure enough to do that. Please don't do it. But I will lead anybody over there who wants to go. What you're going to see is the remains of the windmill that powered the water that came from the pond, which is, you can just see the green pond over there. It's all green. You guys see that? When I proposed to a scout that we build this makeshift bridge, I said, I don't want this to be a big fancy wooden bridge because I don't want everybody going over there. It's not necessary and dangerous. So I said, we're going to build it with rocks. Then DEC got involved. DEC told me you can't do that because you're going to block up the creek. And I said, no, I'm not. And this is far more than what I put there. This is expanded, and people must be throwing rocks in there. In the end, DE said, okay, you can do it. Because they realized I wasn't doing anything that was detrimental to this creek in any way. So it was a hassle that we had to get through. But the scouts helped me build this thing, and they used something called, there's these blanket type things that you drag rocks with, which Plan allowed us to borrow in order to do this. Everything I do in here must be okayed by Plan. They have never told me no, but I've never proposed anything that's weird. I'm trying to propose things that are normal and fit in with the nature of this place as well, because we want to keep it as it is. So, anybody want to go over? Okay.
Oh, wow. This is part of it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, we didn't get up this far, I don't think. Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, I don't know if you've ever gone to Sagamore Hill in Long Island.
Never have,
Teddy
no.
Roosevelt
Right.
summer home. He had something just like
Yeah,
this.
really?
Yeah.
I imagine it was
Very
pretty
similar.
common design
Yeah, that time
at that
period.
time. Here's the remains of what used to stand up tall. The wood has all rotted away, but this remains. And if you walk up this little pathway, you can see the 4 concrete supports that were used to hold it up And I think from this vantage point, you can see the pond a little bit better.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot of green on it because it's stagnant. But that was the water that was coming from the pond to the windmill and then to the house.
What was it? Was there a pipe underground?
Mm-hmm. Some of the pipes are still here.
Oh, okay.
And there's some of the pipes in the house. I don't know if they're all intact anymore. I think they've probably been pretty much destroyed at some point. But that allowed the indoor plumbing in the house.
Did they ever find out like who the builders or architects of the house or these things were?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Looks like some beautiful. I might take a quick look at that.
Yeah.
Foundation.
I thought it's good.
All these trees have grown since that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. And everything that falls, they're leaving on the ground. They're not trying to do anything.
Unless it blocks paths, then they chainsaw them
Yeah.
so the path is open. But otherwise, everything remains as it is.
Because our camp up at Scroon, we're starting to get trees coming down now that have aged out.
Yeah.
I've been toying with what I want to do. So far, we've left them lying.
Yeah.
So that might be what they just end up doing.
Yeah.
So they have a storage tank at the house? Or,
They may have. We don't know that for sure. There was something way in the top of the house that people have described for me, but I can't tell for sure what it was. But it could have been a storage tank.
because that'd be kind of erratic depending on the
Yeah, you would think so. You'd have to, because that would give you the pressure
Yeah,
from on high. Yeah.
Looks like it had a nice view from that upper little balcony that they had at the top.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty good size, really. I mean, you really can't get a handle. That was wooden on the outside of it. I believe so, yeah.
Have you seen many others like this in the Boston area?
I've never seen anything like this anyplace.
That's amazing.
You like electricity? I wonder why. We all do.
My grandparents lived in a house. I guess it was a spring like up on the hill, and they ran a pipe down right into the
Yeah.
house.
Gravity feed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It works.
Where was it? What town was that?
Uh, Town of Queens, Albany County.
Oh, down in Queens. That's an old
All right. Yeah.
town.
So you have just walked a couple miles worth on these trails. There's actually 4 to 5 miles of trails in here. And because this is so popular and a lot of people want to come here, we're going to be written up in this book that's going to be published in the fall.
Oh, wow.
Capital District Hikes. And this guy has been in contact with me over the course of the last year, getting information about this, and he's done a really nice job of writing up where the hikes go. It's not published yet.
I know them.
You know them? Okay.
Yeah.
And they do a good job. They've done 2 or 3 books like
They
this
have
now.
done some wonderful
Yeah, they're
trails with tails.
yeah. So you'll see this written up. So we are famous beyond just this area as well. And a lot of the people who come here are not from the Boston area. They're from further out than that. So we've become quite renowned for this park. And we've done everything we can and will continue to preserve what we have here so that it's around for many, many generations to come. And I'm sure you guys, just by being part of this tour, will help me in any way you can to do that as well. So I appreciate any assistance you can give in not only talking this place up, but also talking about the preservation of these things that we have, so that other people can access them. Any last questions?
No, thank you for all your work. It's been a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is a lot of fun. I wouldn't do it if it weren't a lot of fun. So, all right, we are on our way out. Back to the cars.